Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan. Today I'm here with Shane, and today we are going to be taking a look at some of the, I guess, like February tournament results for Kill Team.
I have gone on record in the past saying I don't super value win rates as like a pure system for determining what's too good and what's not good enough. But it's certainly something to consider for starters. The data is really interesting, and a lot of people do care about it. So that's why we're talking about it today.
So, I guess where do you want to start with on this graph?
Well, there's I think the notable things that like stick out to me when I look right at it is like first of all, elite teams get a lot of play. So Legionary and Intercession, especially Intercession,
Yeah,
are a very very big chunk of the kill teams that are being played at tournaments, which isn't super surprising, if you ask me.
yeah, same. I mean, like
Um,
we saw at Kill Team Open, it felt like half the field was Intercession and Legionnaires. So, but yeah,
yeah, and on top of that, Into the Dark, I think, is at least has the perception of being favorable to elites a little more than open board, and with that being popular right now, it makes sense that that would accentuate. I personally think that even without, like, even if it was just open board, and we know that for a fact, these would probably still be the most played teams, but probably not to this degree, if I had to guess.
yeah. So, taking a look at, I guess we'll take a closer look at the Intercession squad here. So they have a 50.2% win rate. Are you surprised by that at all, given the strength of the team?
A little bit. I am and I'm not. So I think for a lot of teams in the game, I think when you, the more games they have, the more closer they're going to end up being towards the middle. But to see them right, like just smack dab in the middle, I think my theory is I think this win rate would probably be a little bit higher if not for a couple things. For starters, it's like the intro team. A lot of people who play this team a lot are not super competitive players. They're players that just happen to own intercessors. It's really accessible. It's an easy load, like on the mind of the player playing
Yeah,
it. So it like a lot of players will gravitate to it. And then I also think the fact that the second most played team, Legionary, is what I would consider kind of a counter to Intercession. So the next most represented faction is a team that they are not particularly good against. I think those two things take us to like a 50% win rate, when in reality, I think that they are a little bit higher in terms of power level in my eyes.
gotcha.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, Legionaries, it feels like are a natural predator, I guess, out in the
Mhm.
wild for the
Yeah.
the Intercession squad. And yeah, there's just like a bunch of like newer players picking them up and taking them to tournaments and stuff. So I think they're still a very good team. I mean, obviously, I went 5-2-1 with them at KTO.
Hmm.
And I didn't even feel like I was really playing them to their full potential until probably like day 2-ish. And even then, I was still learning tricks with them. So,
Yeah, and then on top of that too, we just had Adrian place third or second, no third at LVO with them, and there was another intercession that was in the top 10 at KTO.
yep.
So they're clearly a strong team. I think that in my mind they're a better team than a 50% win rate, but you know
Yeah. So
that's what
going off of like the Games Workshop like metric when it comes to like nerfing or like buffing teams, uh, this team is as close as you can really get at 50.2% win rate. So I mean, would you? I personally would not expect this team to be like nerfed, or it's definitely not going to get buffed anytime in the near future.
I don't think we need intercession buffs,
No.
but no, it is a little. Yeah, I know specifically what GW said in the past on their on the data slate articles on Warhammer Community is that they really want all their teams to hover between a 45% win rate and a 55% win rate, and if you're in that area, then they're okay with
Yeah.
you. So any team in that area, I would imagine, based on their philosophy, that we don't see them touched in the next data slate. Which, I mean, they're doing it every 3 months or so, so there probably should be one pretty soon.
Hmm.
Um, And it would make sense that they'd be looking pretty closely at the February data here that we've got. And one thing I wanted to bring up was Glass Half Dead made a video not too long ago talking about the fact that, well, pointing out the fact really that oddly enough, there are way more teams outside of that 45 to 55% bracket than there are teams inside of it,
Right.
which is kind of alarming. But especially when you compare it to 40K and AOS, which most of the teams end up being in that 45 to 55 bracket. But I think with Kill Team, we just have such a smaller sample size that I think we're these anomalies, and like not necessarily
They spike harder, right?
Yes, 100%. So like, I guess we can start talking about the extremes on these graphs.
Sure. So,
actually, if we want to click over to faction win rates,
yeah,
that would probably be the easiest place to see some of the extremes. And the nice thing about these stats is they're separated between win rates for all events and win rates for events with at least 4 rounds and at least 16 players, which actually GW also tends to prefer for their data the bigger events with more players. So
yeah,
something to consider.
One team that doesn't really get talked a whole lot about recently has got to be the Hunter Clade. I mean, I do want to talk about the Elucidian Starstriders. They are sitting at number 1 with 65.1% win rate and 4.86% of the tournament meta for the month of February.
Crazy.
So I mean, yeah, they're very, very good, clearly. So I mean, like, that's good, right? There's really only 2 kill teams in the tournament meta that are actually breaking like double digits. So I like that. You know, it's a wide variety of teams that are being taken in the current meta game. So I think that's really cool. But yeah, let's talk about the Elucidian Starstriders. They make up a comparatively small amount of the meta, but not insignificant. And they do have a 10% above like that Games Workshop Goldilocks zone for where they want win rates to be at max. What do you think about the team?
Well, so this is really fun. I feel very, so on one hand, I've said that I don't value win rates as like the number one thing, but on the other hand, I did make a tier list about a month ago, and I said that Starstriders are the best team in the game, and the data has really backed me up on that in the last month.
Okay.
So I think right now, if you ask me right now, I'm a huge fan of win rates, and they are the number one indicator, of course, to justify my opinion. Yeah.
Infallible data.
But seriously, these numbers are crazy, and there's no mistaking that this is, I mean, I think they're the best team. 4.5% roughly of the teams, 4.8% of higher of like bigger tournaments is one of the higher numbers. I want to say they're like, outside of the elite teams, there's only like, you know, like probably like 3 or 4
it's
teams.
Like Corsairs and Kroot and Pathfinders and Blooded. Okay, actually, and Vettguard and Navy Breachers, but that's it. Nobody else.
Yeah, so they're in like the top 6 or 7 of like 20 something teams.
Yeah.
Right. Weirdly enough, I mean, you mentioned Hunter Clade. Hunter Clade and big events is sitting at the second highest win rate in February, which is crazy to me because I haven't heard a thing about them. Like at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's only making up 1.87% of the meta.
Yeah. It's a very small sample size.
Very small sample size, but I mean, still, that win rate is crazy. I was looking at Hunter Clade the other night, and, you know, after like the last balance status like came out, it's like this team, it feels like you can play them in such a way, and if you get the play pattern down right, you can run them at like full like power level optimization, I guess. If you're chaining their canticles or whatever they're called.
Yeah, they're like a really deep toolbox.
Yeah, they're super toolboxy, and it feels like you can just, you know, if you have 2 boxes of Scarians and you have 2 boxes of Skitarii, like you can build out the toolbox and just have like an answer to like every team in the game. barring maybe
Yeah,
like some edge cases. But
I had the opportunity to play against Hunter Clade at KTO on my last game of day one, and it was a very bloody game.
yeah,
And I was playing Legionnaires, obviously, and it leaned in my favor, but there were so many dead operatives by like the second round. They're a very lethal team, and I think the nerfs to them were pretty good. Despite the fact that they're sitting at a 62% win rate here on the bigger data. On the when you factor in all teams, they actually, or not all teams, but all events, they fall down to like a 55%. And generally speaking, I can't imagine we'll see any more Hunter Clade nerfs unless they really start to jump up in terms of players while keeping these numbers. Would you agree with that?
oh yeah. So we're looking at the highest of highs right now. Gellerpox are up there. Void Dancer are up there. I'm kind of surprised to see Veteran Guardsmen doing as well as they are in those larger events.
Yeah, they're really good.
They're doing better than Imperial Navy Breachers, which is actually crazy to me. Imperial Navy Breachers, I think for percentage of the meta combined with win rate percentage, it looks like they're the strongest because they make up 8.61% of the meta in those larger tournament events, and they have a 58.3 win rate percentage. So I mean, like, I know you just said you think Elucidi and Star Striders are the best faction in the game, but do you think like Imperial Navy Breachers are like at least a close second?
In my mind, they're definitely a close second. It's those two at the top.
Is it literally like splitting hairs, or do you think there's like levels?
It's tough to say. Star Striders feel very clearly like overtuned to me, whereas Breachers don't feel like an impossible task.
Yeah.
Not that Star Striders feel like an impossible task, but to me, it's Star Striders, and then Breachers are not far behind, and then after that, it's like Gellerpox and I mean, kind of just Gellerpox, and then a bunch of teams like kind of hovering right below Gellerpox.
Mm-hmm.
And Gellerpox is a team that seems totally unfazed by the last batch of nerfs that they got. They were sitting at about a 60% win rate, and they got a big nerf. All their mutants and glitchlings went from a 5-up Feel No Pain to a 6-up Feel No Pain, and their Techno Curse got nerfed. And Gellerpox just kind of laughed and stayed exactly at a 60%.
Exactly at 60%, yeah.
I think we're going to see another batch of Gellerpox nerfs. Breacher nerfs and Star Strider nerfs feel like a given to me.
Yeah.
I hope there's Star Strider nerfs. Breachers, I would almost guarantee. It just feels obvious.
Yeah.
But as far as these other teams up here, I don't know. I don't see anything particularly problematic. One funny note, if you go to all events,
yeah,
we have Hand of the Archon at 4th.
Yeah,
overall.
I noticed that.
They've only got about 30 games of data, so take it with a grain of salt. But in those first 30 games, it's a 56% win rate. So hey, they're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Exaction Squad are literally the very bottom of the bottom with like probably like 15 games. Did we want to? So before we talk about the bad teams, I just want to quickly highlight Blooded, who is performing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
In big events, they're sitting at a 56% win rate, and in all events, they're sitting at a more modest about a 53% win rate.
Mm-hmm.
So, Blooded, I think, are definitely a team that has been very happy to see Into the Dark. I think they're probably one of the biggest beneficiaries of Into the Dark. They were a team that was kind of, I don't want to say underpowered before, but they definitely didn't have the illusion or the appearance of a top team, and the numbers didn't indicate that they were performing particularly well.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden now that all events pretty much for the most part are either Into the Dark or mixed, Blooded are killing it. And I don't think we should have any Blooded nerfs or anything, but I think that's cool to see.
Yeah, me too. So getting into, I guess, the bad teams now, let's talk about the worst bespoke team on this list. And oh my god, it's not Hyrotech Circle, surprisingly enough. It's
Yeah,
actually the Phobos Strike team. 2.99% of the meta, so the same percentage we're seeing as Gellerpox Infected, but only a 23.4 win rate, which is abysmal.
horrible. I
Um,
mean, that's like sound the alarms, right?
Down tremendous, down
Um,
apocalyptic. Like the lowest win rates for comparison in like big 40k, I think are like mid 30s.
mhm.
So like
We've got quite a
that's
few mid 30s too that are head and shoulders sitting above Phobos and win
yeah.
rate.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, if you go to in the bigger pool of all events, Phobos are above two teams. I'm not going to count Exaction Squad, but they are above two teams. One of which is unsurprising. The other is a kind of a brain teaser. Um, but before we talk about that, Phobos are definitely not okay. I think a lot of like the talk has mostly been about how bad Hyrotech is. And
Yeah.
Hyrotech is really bad, and we're going to talk about Hyrotech, but I don't think Phobos are far above them, if at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it feels like splitting hairs to me at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So Phobos buffs incoming anytime soon, do you think?
It's funny. Yeah, they've gotten buffed like twice in a row now, and it's done nothing. I feel like their win rate has gotten worse as they've gotten buffs. So,
Do you think it's just like none of the more like experienced, like I guess we'll call them like pro kill team players have like picked up this faction? Or do you think it's just like the faction's just bad?
both. I think they're bad. I think players aren't playing them because they're bad, and they're unlike other teams. Like there's some teams that are kind of bad, and top players aren't playing them, like Kasserkin. But I think Kasserkin are actually like just playable enough that they can have like a semi-respectable win rate or like warp
They
coven
can
or
hang,
something.
yeah.
It's not a good win rate necessarily, but it's not horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Phobos, I think, is really, really bad. They're hard to play. So, first of all, the people that are playing them are not like super competitive players because typically competitive players are gravitating towards the top teams. And because they're hard to play, the players that are playing them are probably not having a ton of success with them. They're not very like user friendly. It's like the opposite of intercession.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they need some help. I don't know what kind of help they need, but they need something.
Let's talk about Hyrotech Circle a little bit.
Okay.
Because this team, I don't even know where to begin, honestly. In the four round and over 16 player events, they make up 2.99% of the meta with a 34.1% win rate. Didn't like Glass take these guys to a tournament and do well?
Glass took them to like a small tournament. And
Oh,
won.
okay.
But it was like a 4-player like round robin.
Oh, okay.
But Glass has been playing. He was playing them a little bit at He didn't participate in KTO, but he brought his Hyrotech to KTO and he was playing
Yes.
some games with them on the side. And I
Yep.
didn't really get to watch his games with Hyrotech, but they are lacking for sure.
Yeah. So what are they lacking in? What do you think they
Well,
need to get over the top?
Well, where do you begin? I think that they have like they're kind of like an elite team. Like there's basically 6 guys and then 2
Mhm.
little like creatures
Yeah.
that help them out. But the 6 guys that are supposed to be pulling the weight aren't really like they're not really good
They're just
enough.
not good. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a bunch of 2 APL, really slow guys. They don't really have most teams have like a strong leader that kills things. This team does not have a strong leader.
Hmm.
The Cryptex are like okay after the most recent round of buffs, but they're still not on the level of like, you know, that plasma pistol Sarge that hits on 2s that like half the teams in the game have.
Yeah.
Um And kind of like Phobos, I haven't gotten to play Higher Tech, but I have a feeling that they are probably not an easy team to play, even if they are secretly a good team, which I don't think they are.
No.
And I think if they were to get buffed to become good, they probably wouldn't. It's unlikely they'd be like an easy team to play well, even after buffs. They're just one of those teams. But I don't really know what they need. I don't play Higher Tech. I've played against them like once, maybe, like ever. So I'm mostly going off of like what I've looked at and what I've read, as far as like my own take on the team. So they're not killing it, obviously.
Corsairs are looking pretty good. I mean,
Well,
like
hold on.
they're.
I think you skipped an absolute anomaly at the bottom of the win rates.
Oh, we want to talk about that?
We're talking about Pathfinders.
Oh, I thought we were talking about something else. Yeah, Pathfinders are down bad.
They're sitting at a 33% win rate.
Yeah. And 4.11% of the total meta in those larger tournaments. I mean, I think do you think that like playing on Into the Dark with like KTO happening and everything, do you think that like kind of hurt them a little bit?
Yeah, I think Into the Dark, it's like a myriad of things. So I think Into the Dark, they're not. I don't think they're horrible on Into the Dark or even bad on Into the Dark, really. But they're way worse comparatively. Like the difference between Open and Into the Dark is one of the bigger differences, I think, for any team. So when you consider that, and the fact that with all these Into the Dark tournaments and mixed tournaments, the good players that were not all the good players, but a lot of the good players that were playing Pathfinders have decided to move to other teams. Coupled with the fact that Pathfinders, while being very good, are not an easy team to play by any means. So you give them kind of a format that they don't love, and a lot of the top players jump off of them, and it's a small sample size, even with 4%. This is kind of like this is what I'm talking about when I say that win rates are not to be taken completely at face value, because if you take win rates at face value, then Pathfinders are like among the worst teams in the game.
Yeah, so I was actually just gonna say, you think they need buffs?
Absolutely not. Games Workshop, please do not buff Pathfinders. Oh my god. Could you imagine?
Yes.
And they just got nerfed too. And whenever a team gets nerfed, people jump off them for that reason too. So that's another reason.
Okay.
I actually think that nerf was pretty significant, but not enough to make them a bad team. I think they're probably still a top 3 team on open board.
Okay. Interesting. Are there any other teams on this list that you want to talk about?
Commandos are down pretty bad.
Yeah.
Wormblade not great either. Wormblade are looking rough. I mean, so let's count. How many teams are in the bracket the GW likes? I see Legionary, Intercession.
It's between 45% and 55%, right?
Yes.
So we've got...
I count 5 teams.
Blooded are like just above it, but yeah, Legionaries at 53%, Intercession at basically 50%, the Corsairs at 46, Kroot at 45, Kasserkin at 45.8, actually the same as Kroot Farstalkers. Warp Coven 44, yeah, because it's 45 and 55, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, just 5 teams are in that Goldilocks zone.
Yeah. Not ideal.
Yeah.
But
does this make you think that like sweeping changes could be coming?
I don't think so. I don't think sweeping changes need to happen. I just think more people need to be playing our game.
Gotcha.
If I had to guess, and I think with that, I think we'd see these win rates diverge a little bit more towards the middle. Or I guess converge, not diverge. Yeah, I don't know. It's just monthly win rates, and I'm sure if you were to look at like from the beginning of the year, it's probably less extreme because it's a bigger sample size. But this is just February that we're looking at, and it'll be interesting to see as we get into into March with Soul Shackle dropping and being a little more available to people.
Mm-hmm.
What those two teams do in the meta. I do think that Archon, once everybody's settled into them, they're probably going to be a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Exaction is probably going to be somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
If I had to guess. And the only other thing I wanted to really touch on is like just for curiosity's sake is looking at the bigger disparities between the win rates when it comes to all events and bigger events. So like some of the bigger ones I mentioned Blooded earlier, who have a 56 in bigger events and like a 53 in smaller events, like a whole 3% difference, which is not a ton, but kind of significant. Kroot, Farstalker, Kinband are sitting at a 45%, about a 46% on bigger events, and about a 49% across all events. And then I want to say there's another one that I'm forgetting. Oh, it's Vetguard. Vetguard have a 50% win rate across all events and a 58. No, sorry, a 59.
Yeah.
At bigger events, which is it's got to be the biggest number difference right there. Actually, Gellerpox as well have a whole 6% higher difference between all events and big events.
Yeah, that is interesting. So let's say that, Elucidian Starstriders, we'll say like Gellerpox, and then Navy Breachers. All three of those teams get nerfed in the next balanced data slate.
Probably, yeah.
What teams do you think like rise to the top if you were making a tier list?
Ooh, so like if those three teams, it would depend on what the nerfs are, but let's assume it brings them back to normal. Like what teams feast?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. If I had to guess, so Starstriders, Gellerpox, and Breachers, what comes out ahead? I wouldn't be surprised if Blooded. I think Blooded really, really does not like Starstriders or Gellerpox. And if we keep seeing Into the Dark, which I think we will, I think Blooded can jump up and have a big impact from that.
Yeah.
And also it depends on what teams the top players jump to, I guess. So I think I don't know. I still kind of have always believed that if the best players just kept playing Vetguard would be one of the best teams. They're kind of like, they never really got nerfed. They were like the best team at one point, and the only nerf they've really had was the grenade nerf.
Yeah, and that was game wide. That was not just a targeted nerf towards them.
Yeah. But like the things that were problematic for that team, like the demo specialist in particular, and they just have the amount of bodies and the weight of activations and like the efficiency of the team. None of that stuff went away.
Yeah.
It's all still there. I think the team is really good with crit ops. The only thing that they don't love is security got a little bit worse, and they only have security. But outside of that, that's like the only drawback to the team that I can even think of. I think they are like on paper one of the best teams.
Gotcha.
Even on Into the Dark, I really like them.
I don't know about that one, but
I really like them on Into the Dark.
I don't know. Like, you're taking security and you take the secure like midline or whatever. You can't take that on like a bunch of the maps that have like a wall going down the middle.
Yeah, just don't take it on those ones. Just take it on the other ones.
All right.
Take central control. You got the secure access point is really good. And they have good faction tag ops, so there you go.
True. Well, all right. I think that about wraps it up for kind of like this February Kill Team meta analysis. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. A special thank you to everybody supporting us on Patreon and through the YouTube, like channel membership program that we have going on here. If you want to support us, please go ahead and check those out. And, if you want to support us, but, you don't want to buy into anything, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future Kill Team content. Thank you guys for tuning in once again, and we'll see you all again in the next one.